Welcome to this STS-134 post-launch briefing with U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords' office. We have with us at NASA's Kennedy Space Center members from the Representative Giffords' congressional office to discuss how the Congresswoman's experience was seeing Endeavour lift off this morning, along with her husband, STS-134 Commander Mark Kelly. First, we have Representative Giffords' Chief of Staff, Pia Carasone, our Press Advisor, Mark Kimball, and new media strategist, Ashley Nash-Hahn. We'll start with opening comments and then take questions.
Thanks, Allard. First, I want to say thanks to the whole public affairs team here at NASA, everyone at Kennedy Space Center and Johnson Space Center in Houston. We've been very supported throughout this whole process, so I just want to thank everybody that played a role in that. And thanks to all of you guys for sticking around. This is just going to be quick. I'm going to say a few words and then, happy to answer some questions. First of all, I'll kind of run through the timeline here. We arrived yesterday around noon. We flew out of Ellington Field in Houston. NASA provides transportation for the spouses. We were on a flight with Greg Johnson, astronaut Greg Johnson's family. We, as you guys may have seen, if you sign up for our Twitter or Facebook accounts, we did a flyby of the launch pad yesterday upon landing, which was very neat. Congressman really enjoyed seeing that. We landed here at KSC. And then we went to the beach house where the spouses and 134 crew were able to have a little lunch and spend some time having their kind of last goodbyes. So we were there for about 2 hours, I think. We went over to the gator pond, I think it's called. Saw my first Florida gator. And then that was it, really. We went back to the hotel in Cocoa Beach, and Congresswoman was able to see some staff members that were here working. Mark Kimball and Ashley next to me were able to see her for the first time since the shooting. And then this morning we left, about 6:30, arrived at the Launch Control Center roof, arrived at LCC around 7. And we held in a conference room until we went up to the roof at about 20 after 8. Obviously, we saw a beautiful liftoff this morning. Spent about 15 minutes after liftoff on the roof with the rest of the spouses and some of their children, and then we went back downstairs and I've been here since. So it was a great day. Obviously, we've been looking forward to this for many months. Mark was assigned this flight in August 2009, and Gabby and all of us have been really excited ever since. Now, in the last 4.5 months since the shooting, it's obviously been much more challenging, being with Mark and Gabby as they made the decision that he would fly, and obviously with NASA also that he would still keep this mission. It was a big one for their family, so it was a real sense of relief from all of us that this went off safely, and it's a very exciting mission also. So that's kind of just the lay of the land. I know there's plenty of questions, and I'm gonna just start with questions, and we'll go into other stuff, I'm sure. So.
Okay, like you said, we'll start taking questions now. Wait till the microphone gets to you. Please say your name and news affiliation, whom you'd like to answer your question. We'll start with Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie Innes from the Arizona Daily Star. I wondered if the Congresswoman had any reaction, if she spoke at all during or after the launch happened.
She, for all of us, we were sort of speechless during this process. So there, I can't say there were a lot of words, during the viewing, but she did at the end say to me, I was sort of standing to her left, and she looked up at me and she said, "Good stuff, good stuff." That was the thing I remember. But it wasn't a lot of talking at that moment. We were more cheering, clapping, kind of really taking a moment to, absorb what we were seeing.
Here we go to Steve Nunez. I believe in.
Steve's back there.
It's 3 rows in. And
Steve Nunez, KG9, ABC affiliate, Tucson. Pia, can you describe exactly what she was doing before, during, and after? What her emotions were like?
Sure. Well, I think we all were looking up in the sky and seeing some clouds at about 7:30. We were wondering, is this going to be scrubbed? We can have an issue here. So before we were sort of tentatively excited, but a little worried. But obviously, as the sun kind of came up and the clouds burned off a bit, it became clear that this was probably going to happen. So, she got very excited that looked like it was a go. And then when we got up to the roof, it was the first time she was seeing the spouses that morning. They've known each other, as you guys know, that report on flights. The spouses really get to know one another pretty well throughout this process. So she hadn't seen them yet today. So that was exciting. And after, I think relief was her biggest feeling. She was very proud, is always proud of Mark and what he does. But, it was an exciting moment for her to watch. Scott Kelly delivered flowers to Gabby and to Claire and Claudia, Mark's daughters, right at main engine shutoff. And that happened obviously on the roof. And then we went downstairs.
Just a quick follow-up. Was she holding anyone's hand or?
No.
Did she embrace anyone?
Yeah, there was hugs all around. Absolutely. I mean, it was very celebratory among the spouses and her family. Her mom was with her, obviously watching, and she was standing with her the whole time. So.
Okay, Evan.
Hi, Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. Could you tell us about the Congresswoman's schedule? How long will she stay in Florida? Will she be here for the landing, or is she going in and come back, or will hang out for the next couple of weeks?
We don't know whether or not she'll come back for the landing. I believe it's at sometime after 1 a.m. So it's unclear whether or not she'll be able to make that trip for no other reason that it'll be disruptive to her therapy. So it'll frankly be up to her in part whether or not she wants to make it, and also the doctors. And as far as her travel back, she will be leaving soon to go back today, shortly here in just an hour or so, and she'll be heading back to Houston.
Christopher Sign with the ABC affiliate in Phoenix. Two questions, really. Number one, it's my understanding last time she arrived here when that launch was scrubbed that a nurse traveled with her. Was there a nurse or doctor with her this time? And then the second question is, it's my understanding that her and her husband had exchanged rings, if you will. Was she clinching his ring, holding his ring during the launch? Anything like that you can describe, please?
Sure. Well, your first question about the nurses, we have two nurses with us, Darlene and Vivian, terrific nurses from Tier Memorial Hermann in Houston. We have two because one sleeps and the other works, so they're 12-hour shifts, and that's just really for precaution. She doesn't have a lot of need for any medical staff at this point, but she's still under the care of the hospital as an inpatient, full-time patient at the hospital, so it's appropriate for her to have medical staff with her. And your second question about the ring, yes, they exchanged rings. Mark had brought her wedding ring to space for the last two launches, and this time she wanted his back, his in return for her. So his fingers are a little bit bigger than hers, just a little bit. So it doesn't quite fit around her finger. So she's wearing it around a chain on her necklace. Yeah, and I don't remember seeing her clasping it. I don't think so.
Yes, Stefano Collidan for Italian State Radio and Television. A question that crossed my mind when you said that Miss Giffords said good stuff. Is she in a state of sort of aphasia or recovering from that, or is it just because she didn't feel like talking more than what she did?
I think it was a combination of the two. I mean, I'm not going to get into the medical details of her recovery or challenges, but I mean, for all of us, it was really, there's not many words to describe. Obviously, watching a shuttle launch in person. So,
Seth Bornstein, AP. During the mission, there's often time where you can have family crew conferences. Are there arrangements being made at Tier so she could do it from Tier? How many times, have you arranged to do that? And is there anything, besides the ring that he's taking for her?
On your first question, yes, the hope is that we will arrange for a video conference at some point, and where is still being determined. We may be able to do it at Tier, but she has gone down to Johnson Space Center multiple times in the last couple weeks when Mark was in quarantine for crew dinners, so that's an easy trip for her to make if she needs. And anything else he's brought, she sent him with a note, which has been reported, which they hid on the shuttle. So he's got that up there, and I don't know that he's brought anything else of hers with him. I don't know. Oh, he's got a picture. I know he's got a picture of the two of them.
Okay. Ken?
Ken Kramer, Spaceflight Magazine. I wonder if you could tell us anything about Gabrielle's future, when she might be able to return to Congress, and will her husband continue as an astronaut, or what's his future? Thanks.
Certainly don't want to talk for Mark. He'll be back in 16 days, so you can ask him that. As far as the Congresswoman, as we've said, we don't have a timeline necessarily. Every patient is different that recovers from these brain injuries. All we can say is that she's focused on her recovery, and really is every day. She works extremely hard. For people that know her, she's a very determined person, and our hope is that she can return to her life, both personally and professionally, as quickly as possible. But we don't have a sense yet of when. It's just too early to tell.
Okay. Questions on this side? No. Okay. We'll go way in the back. Okay. Then we'll come back to this side. Okay.
Hi, Rory O'Neill with Metro Networks Radio. I know that there was a large delegation from Congress that flew with the president last time. Did she get a chance to see any of them at that time? And were there any members of the congressional delegation at the viewing location where she was today?
No, there were no members of Congress or anyone else at the viewing location. It was, strictly the family, small group of family. During the last trip, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, who's a close friend of hers, was able to come over after it had been scrubbed, and we still went over to the Launch Control Center, and she joined us over there for lunch on the last attempt, but not this time.
Chris again from Phoenix. Is she fully aware of all of this, of the intense media questioning, if you will, for lack of a better term, and is she now fully aware of what happened on that January day? I know that Mark was waiting to tell her bits and pieces, if you will, to put the entire puzzle together for her. So is she aware of everything that took place that day now?
She is not aware of everything, but she, as she processes this, as anyone would, she's learned more. The question about the press, it's funny, we try to tell her, there's really extreme interest in your story here, and she's still a bit surprised to hear it. I mean, she hasn't, for instance, been exposed. She hasn't had done an interview, so she hasn't really fully, personally understood what that's like. But we tell her, I told her just now, hey, I'm going down to do a press conference. What do you want me to say? We joke around and stuff like that. But, I think she's getting a sense of it. I mean, she certainly understands the outpouring of support that's come from around the country, well, around the state, first of all, which is, prior to January 8th, to have people in, the far corners of Arizona know who she is and care so deeply and sending her cards. But then around the country and world, it's really made a difference. So it's, for somebody that's day in, day out in a hospital recovering from something like this, to, be reminded regularly that they're loved and supported and thought of around the world it's definitely moving.
Alan Boyle with MSNBC. The Congresswoman has been looking forward to this for so long. Is there something else that's in the plans for after this? Is there some thought that Mark and Gabby will get away somewhere? Is there anything special that's being planned to mark his return?
That's a good question. I would have to let him answer that. I know he has thought about that topic. It's hard to think beyond the flight. It has been hard to think beyond the flight because that's a big, set of, tasks ahead of all of us, but mostly Mark. So I would suspect that they'll try to do something soon after his arrival. Obviously, you guys know, the crew is always busy after arrival on, all the debriefing and press that happens. But I think that as the summer goes on, they'll try to catch some alone time and take a couple days off.
Scott Powers, Orlando Sentinel. I want to ask you about a tiny moment that occurred early this morning on the astronaut walkout, and Commander Kelly reached up and pointed upward. Do you know, by any chance, if that was a gesture toward her and whether she saw it?
She didn't. She did not. We were not here during the walkout. So he may have been pointing at the roof of the Launch Control Center where the spouses watched it, but we weren't there. None of the spouses were.
Okay. With Todd and then we'll...
Todd Halverson of Florida Today. This one might be for one of your colleagues, but I was just wondering how Gabby is putting her tweets out, whether she is actually, keyboarding them in, or whether she's, telling you what she wants to express and then gets put online. How is that all working?
I will let Ashley speak to that if there's anything more you want to add. But we had some confusion early on about who was tweeting, so that we are careful, as you can see, that we say staff or office or me. So no, it's not her, it's us. But we do discuss with her like we discuss everything.
Should I add anything?
Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to say that prior to the shooting, the Congresswoman was an avid tweeter. She often used her iPad or her iPhone to do those kinds of things. And since then, we're continuing to keep them engaging and fun, which is what she always liked to use those tools for. That's it.
Okay, we'll go with Bob in the middle.
Hey, Bob Woodard from ABC. I talked to some other family members, and they said that they were standing and watching this when it launched. Was Gabby walking? Was she standing or sitting?
She was sitting. Sometimes when you're looking up, you can get off balance. So we wanted to make sure that she was comfortable and able to, really gaze at that and not have to focus on standing and balancing, which for her, is something that she works on. I mean, she is doing a great job, but we wanted her to feel very comfortable. So she had the option. She, I think, did stand to greet the spouses, but she sat for the actual launch.
Okay.
John Bracken from WRDJ here in Merritt Island, and congratulations to you and to Congressman Giffords on making it as far as you have. Obviously, she's a great inspiration to people who have been through deep trauma. How has that affected her relationship or concept of God?
I don't know. I can't begin to answer that question. I think we'd have to ask her. I think for anyone involved in something like this, you obviously take stock of how valuable and precious life is. But I can't tell you. First
Irene?
time I've had that question.
Irene?
Irene Klotz with Reuters. Since the shooting, you all have really stepped out as spokespeople and representatives for the representative. And I'm just wondering, at the time when there was the discussion underway about whether Mark Kelly would resume his work at NASA and go on commanding this flight, if you all personally had any concerns about that and just what, your lives have been, what work you did with the Congresswoman's office prior to the shooting, and what sorts of things you're taking on now, and if Mark's decision to fly this mission has impacted, your work at all in that sense.
Well, first, I think we have all we've all been a sounding board for Mark and Gabby going through this process, but I never would question his decision in terms of, whether or not I thought it was right or wrong. I mean, I personally hope that he would do it because I knew that Gabby would want him to, especially as it became clear that she, thank God, was going to survive the shooting. And then weeks later we realized she was going to begin to make a good recovery right away. So, at that point, it was, we were happy that he decided to do it. As far as how our jobs have changed, it's funny, the last launch, for Gabby's spouse to be an astronaut is, it has a unique impact on our office. Obviously, we work for the Congresswoman. We don't work for Mark. But, during these times when their personal lives become the center of, attention publicly and in the press, there is some sort of overlap there, especially, in the work that Congress does in regards to the human spaceflight program. So we've certainly been supporting mark via Gabby, if you will, throughout this process, just because there's a lot of interest in it. But I'd say our jobs have changed since the 8th, but the core of it has not. We remain committed to serving the constituents of Arizona's 8th District, and we've got a huge and very productive, successful casework team in Tucson and Sierra Vista that, kind of day in, day out provide the bread and butter service that a member of Congress does. So proud of that.
Jim Siegel. I'm with the Celebration Independent newspaper. Celebration is a suburb of Orlando. I'm interested in how her office in Washington is continuing to operate. And are there any, I understand she can't cast votes, but is there any influence that she has through you back in Washington? And who makes decisions in her absence? Is it you or somebody else? Could you describe a little bit about how that works?
Sure. Well, first I was just speaking about the Tucson and Sierra Vista offices, where a lot of I'd say the majority of our work is focused right now. I mean, that's like I said, where the bread and butter work of this office happens. I mean, before the shooting, that was the case, especially in a Congress and in an environment that's often bitter and divided. Where you actually can have an impact and help people is often in your home offices. But to your question, in Washington, Well, a great example is last week the Defense Authorization Bill passed the Armed Services Committee that the Congresswoman sits on, and we had a number of amendments, most notably an amendment addressing traumatic brain injury for returning soldiers from Afghanistan and Iraq. Right now, TRICARE, the insurance program that covers veterans, doesn't cover rehab from traumatic brain injury. So, you have a situation where the Congresswoman is receiving better care than a soldier who was injured similarly at war. That's not right. Most people agree that's not right, and we've taken that issue on. So, as folks know, Adam Smith, who's the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, is a close friend of the Congresswoman's, and he and others on that committee have been very supportive, and were able to help us get some amendments into that bill that you were able to feel the Congresswoman's impact without her actually being physically in D.C. So we're very thankful for their friendship and allegiance when it comes to helping veterans in the military community.
Back another question.
Oh, Stephanie from the Daily Star. I just want to ask Mark Kimball, I guess you hadn't seen Gabby since January 8th, and you were there that day, and I just want to know your reaction to seeing her and, in her recovery.
Well, it was certainly a very emotional moment to see the Congresswoman for the first time in about 4 months, but it was also extremely inspirational. It I think reminds all of us why we're so devoted to her, why we enjoy working for her, and it was extremely encouraging. We've heard such good reports about her recovery, but to actually see her and talk with her, it was a very moving experience, and I'm very glad I did.
Okay, we have a few more minutes left. I want to make sure that as NASA's good hosts, we get all the questions that we can, but make sure Arizona media get a chance. So anybody in Arizona media that has not had a question yet? All right, that's good. All right, well, I guess we'll go in the middle end quickly.
Yeah, I'm Steve Helling with People Magazine. And 2 quick questions. You'd mentioned that she was sitting during the launch. Was she sitting on a wheelchair or in a regular stationary chair? What was she sitting on? And my other question is, you mentioned that Scott Kelly had given her flowers. I need to know what kind of flowers were they?
They were red roses.
We actually have a picture.
And we have a picture that we're flashing there. The beautiful flowers. The vase here with the bigger bouquets for Gabby, and then each single rose for his daughters, Claire and Claudia. She was in a wheelchair, which was for ease because the distance on the roof was kind of large that we were moving around, and it was much quicker to move that way.
Jennifer London with HDNet. You mentioned that a note was sent up with Commander Kelly and placed on the space shuttle. Did Congresswoman Giffords write that note? Did she have help writing that note?
She did write it. Yep.
This side?
Thank you. Jackie Goddard for the Times of London. Just wondering if you yet know at what point she might be considering making a first public appearance or appearance in public, and what is the milestone maybe that might determine what that is and when it happens?
We're far from that. That's not a discussion we've had. I mean, her next medical hurdle is the cranioplasty, which will replace the portion of her skull that had been removed after the shooting. It was taken off on January 8th in a very good split decision made by the trauma team at the University Medical Center in Tucson. It allowed for the brain to swell. It's what's being credited with saving her life, among a lot of luck. So that surgery needs to happen. I mean, that's kind of the next step we're looking at before we begin to think of what happens after that. This is certainly a slow process. I mean, it requires a lot of patience and understanding that recovering from being shot point blank in the head takes time.
Manuel Reg Franze from the Washington Post. Can you give us some sense of her level of comprehension? Can she understand complex concepts and speak in more than simple sentences? And two, what's her voice sound like now?
She understands, if not everything, close to everything. There's hardly a moment that we have that we feel like she's not quite grasping, to the point that she understands sarcastic humor, which, as we all know, is that's generally a more complex set of a complex ability to comprehend. So her voice sounds very normal. A lot of people have asked that question. It sounds as it did before the shooting. She's able to, fluctuate, her volume level and the quality in terms of, if she's being serious or lighthearted or whispering. I mean, all of that, she has all of that function. And, her speech is getting better with the constant therapy she's doing. So we're still seeing a lot of progress.
I'm just about out of time. I want to make sure I get any first-time questions. I think in the front row. Clara? Right.
Clara Moskowitz for Space.com. Can you tell us anything about just how trying the travel was on the Congresswoman and how much maybe it takes out of her to have to make the trip?
Sure. Actually, not a lot of effort. Probably as much effort as any of us go through in packing, anticipating a flight, travel to the airport, the flight. I mean, that whole thing. I think for all of us, sometimes you get tired at the end of that. But she doesn't have any particular medical concerns about flying or traveling that that would leave her in a more difficult position than any of us. So it was a really smooth flight, thanks to NASA and all the folks that made that happen.
Lona O'Connor from the Palm Beach Post. Seems so trivial compared to these other questions, but did she pick the song this morning, and what was it?
It's a question a lot of folks have asked. I believe that Mark has 2 wake-up songs on this 16-day mission, and Mark and Gabby have spoken about them, and I can't quite tell you yet. I think it's a secret, and I'm checking on it, and I'll let folks know when we're able to announce that.
Okay, any other first-time questions? Have a second or another
That's
question?
fine, yeah.
Okay. Front row, Seth, please.
Seth Borenstein on AAP again. Thanks. Pia, you mentioned about the cranioplasty. Last I recall, it was you were looking at May for that, and obviously the mission goes till June 1 now. Are you going to wait till after the mission? Or is it going to be done while Commander Kelly's?
That's a decision the doctors are going to make. When she's ready, they're going to do it. So I can't tell you anything more, but you all will be the first to know.
And in terms of the other thing that's coming up is she's got a birthday coming up. Are there plans to be done, or is this something that I guess, is it going to be a celebration or a low-key thing, or sometimes when you get to be my age, you just try to ignore it completely? Wondering what's going on with that.
That's a good question. We Mark and I had spoken about it. He started thinking about it, but now with the June 1 landing, they're definitely going to do something, but the plans are kind of up in the air still. But he's not one to let things like that go by. So they will do something, I'm sure, when he gets back.
Okay, that's all apparently the time we have. So I wanted to thank the Congresswoman staff for joining us here. We'll now return to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston for continuing coverage of Space Shuttle Endeavour's STS-134 mission to the International Space Station. Thank you.